Boom. Hey, internets. I had a good question. Well, I had a question related to a situation that's actually pretty serious, and I've seen it happen in detail with two different people that are subscribers to this channel. And I'm sure it's the possibility of having it happen is getting larger, and I'm sure it's happened to more than definitely just two people. But the real question of it was, how do I find a legit cut and sew vendor? Because this person who I'd gone back and forth with had just got ripped off from a company that was said to be located in India. In terms of finding a vendor in the past, I've definitely referenced Alibaba and Alibaba Express. The more and more consultation that I'll do with brands that are starting, they'll tell me that they found their vendor there. So I've definitely had varying levels of success stories. And I first of all, you got to give respect and props to Jack Ma. He's a person that I definitely look up to as an entrepreneur. The guy's amazing. Made something out of nothing against a lot of odds. Knows a lot about turning failure into feedback and changing it so you can tweak your mission. One of the richest entrepreneurs in China. Super brilliant in terms of opening up the marketplace that China has available to the world. So, having said that, it also opens up opportunity for people to try to scam you out of out of your money. And so, I don't want to pigeonhole India or China. A scam can happen from anywhere, and so these companies that could be shell companies can be say they're anywhere. They could say they're in Alabama. They can say they're in California, and be trying to scam you out of your money. So. The advice that I have to give to try to prevent this scenario is, well, before that, let me say this. Most of my subscribers are in the US. I do have people outside of the US, but for that, for the same concept though, you might be able to find local vendors, right? So here in the US, the rise of DTG is astounding in terms of how quickly they're able to offer a better quality product. If you find videos of mine from years ago, I was unsure about the technology. We dabbled with DTG when I owned my own high volume shop, but that at this point was several years ago. Okay, and so the technology has come a far way. Teespring, that is partnered with YouTube to help provide merch as a third party, uses this. Any company that says they have no minimum, so they'll do just one, they'll do just two, that's typically DTG. And the quality, while it's not up to par at this point with screen printed, with really good screen printing, it's getting there. So another thing is trying to look at blanks and what we call in the industry is decorating. So anything screen printed, anything embroidered. There's a lot you could do with not just t-shirts, but crew sweatshirts, hoodies, and more apparel that's getting able to be manufactured here in the U.S. so that you can just have vendors kind of decorate or put your designs on them, right? So Bella Canvas, I've said many times with the fast fashion line and the kind of things that they're bringing to market. I see prototypes that actually sometimes don't make it as really avant-garde stuff, but there's other companies out there. So if you stay on top of the blank companies that are really trying to innovate, there's a lot of different SKUs that you can try to keep a lot of your production local. Now, having said that, I'm still a big fan of going overseas for mass production because it's cheaper. If you're looking at 1,000 units or more, which is really kind of the minimum for a lot of factories abroad, and then if you start getting into 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, then there are bigger players that are abroad in the world that other people are starting to look at now because of the U.S. and the tariff war that's going on. If you're watching this years later, then forget that whole last part because it's going to end up however it ends up. But even with higher fees in China, it's still a pretty good deal to do wholesale there. It's weird. This is a side note, but I got a little bit of hate on my channel where some random person was saying, "Why you tell people to go to China? It's so expensive there." And look, if this is your first time ever watching me on the internet, I've been working in professionally, like my name on the business card, working for a company that's doing millions. 20 years at this point. At this point, it's 20 years. And if you're subscribed to the channel, you know I talk about my travels to China for production, both north and south. But the majority is in South China. I've been in Hong Kong for production as well, but a lot of the factories will be in Guangzhou. The big fabric district in China is in Guangzhou. So, in any case, one thing to vet manufacturer is get references from them. So some people will not like to tell you, they can't tell you what brands they're doing in there, but they should be able to give you a reference of who they worked for before. Now, if possible, if they're not a super large company, hopefully you could get a contact of someone and see what working with them looks like a smaller company that they did recently, so you could get a reference of someone who has actually worked with them, because there's no like Yelp for these companies, and I'd be suspicious anyway, because it's such a very specific industry. So that's one thing. Another thing I would do is maybe fly there to actually meet them. Now, for a lot of people, this might be out of the question. And in earlier videos, I said you don't need to do this. Save yourself like $2,000 and you know, airfare and hotel. But I will say, when I developed my brand the first time, I did fly out to China to meet my manufacturer, and they were already working on my prototypes. So when I landed, I could just see what they were looking at right from their sample room, and make my changes in person. Now, so there's something to be said to shaking their hand, meeting with them in person, seeing the fabrics. I also obviously doubled that trip and went to the fabric district to get swatches for future garment styles, and then actually freelance that I was working on at the time. So there's a couple purposes to that trip. In the past, I said you can develop without it, but now with the rise of people trying to scam people, sort of, maybe meeting them in person. So for a lot of people, again, I said it's out of the question. So the third thing that I'm going to say is trying to vet the company by going with a prototype first. So they're going to charge you more for the prototype than their unit price. But a lot of mid-size or bigger production companies, they'll have a department that's sample making, and they'll make the sample in a way that they can translate it to the mass production in the rest of the company, so that if the client says yes, then they can just assign stations. And so there's one person who just sews one long line, and that's what they do all day for that garment, let's just say, and then they pass it off to the next person who might do bar tacks or something different. But the sample making room will make the prototype, and then they'll charge you more for that, but that money should come back to you when you do the mass production. So a more professional or established company, I don't think they'd go through the process of making you a prototype, billing you for it and all of that, if they're not legit. Now, they could do it. They could just send you something and say, here's the prototype, just approve or not approve. But I feel like a person who's going to absolutely scam you would not go through those extra steps and all those extra emails, because they have the risk at that point of you maybe just paying for that one sample for like $100. I'm just throwing a number out there, and losing the lump sum of money. But at least you don't put like, you know, thousands of dollars or like $800 up front and lose that right off the bat. So it's tough for me to say. Those last two suggestions aren't foolproof either. I mean, if you meet them in person and see a working building, that's pretty foolproof, but it's very inconvenient to do that, especially if you're just launching and it's a small thing that you want to get proof of concept for first. The second one is not foolproof, but it's the only thing I could think of at the moment. I don't want this to happen to any of my subscribers, anyone in the world, but I don't want it to happen to my subscribers as well. So just be very careful. That's easy for me to say on this side. But I hope in any case that helps. You guys got any other questions, please drop it all down below. Follow me on social media when you have the chance. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.